worked at a podcast hosting company. People always ask me, should I start a podcast? What's the ROI on a podcast? For me, podcasting is just about these connections that you and I are having right now. When you look at what AI is doing these days, I don't think anyone can be certain. You want to feel good at the end of the day, like I built something great for somebody. I helped somebody with their business. My promise for the WordPress professional is for me to educate, inform, and entertain. I hope that WordPress can continue to be that learning point for a person. My advice has always been, in the face of big business, that you stand out from the human side. What I know for certain is the biggest advantage people are going to have is to...
Welcome. Cosmos by WPLift is where we explore the people, the projects, and the ideas shaping the WordPress universe. This podcast is sponsored by our friends at E2M, the #1 strategic AI-first white label partner for digital agencies. My name is Julia Gollum. I am your host, and today we are joined by Matt Medeiros, host of the WP Minute and the Matt Report. And during my recent Cosmos conversation with Raquel, I asked her to recommend our next guest, and she recommended you, Matt. So here you are. Thank you. Raquel described you as
Awesome.
a prolific brand builder, and she said that you have your pulse on have the pulse of the future of WordPress. And so I'm super psyched for this conversation. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
I have a pulse. I don't know if it's the pulse of WordPress, but I appreciate it. It's exciting to get to meet you virtually and chat about WordPress.
Wonderful. Yay. So Matt, tell me, just for starters, tell me about your journey and what you're up to these days.
Yeah. So I got into WordPress probably right around, I started an agency back in 2007, but I had started to experiment with WordPress just a year or so before that at an ISP that I worked at. We acquired another ISP down on Cape Cod, and they had a web development agency attached to it. And this is back when people didn't even know what websites were. That's how far back it goes. But they were building sites with Drupal 4 at the time, going into Drupal 5. That's how long ago that was. And that was once we took over that company, they were like, hey, we don't know anything about websites. Give it to the guy who kind of knows what websites do. And I was charged to lead that team. And the designer was like, Matt, Drupal is terrible for me to design it. Maybe still is. I don't know. I don't know if the verdict's out on what's easier to design for. But he was like, we got to try this WordPress thing. Heard it was way better to develop for and design for more specifically. And that was the catalyst to get me into WordPress, and started to experiment with WordPress and standard theme by 8-bit. That was, again, dating myself, was the first commercial theme I used. And I was like, wow, look what I can do with WordPress. And it was all sort of downhill from there. Left that company, started an agency, ran that agency for a decade. Worked at a company called Pagely for a little while. After I exited my agency, I worked in the audio and podcasting space at a company called Castos, which Automatic invested in. Now my day-to-day role is at GravityForms as part of their WordPress community stuff. I do a lot more, but that's the official title. And I've been covering and talking about WordPress on various podcasts for the last 15 plus years. And that's here.
Thank you. So how often do you find yourself on this side of the microphone, the guest side?
Yeah, it's funny. Not often. It's always weird. I feel like I'm not prepared because I always feel like I should have all this stuff in my head, as I do when I interview people. But it's calming and stressful at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. And it's fun for me to be on this side of the microphone with you.
Yeah.
You have so much experience as a podcast producer and host. So you've interviewed hundreds of WordPress entrepreneurs on Matt Report. And what patterns do you see in the most successful WordPress businesses? Yeah,
so the Matt Report ran for about, I want to say 10 to 12 years. Time's elusive because of COVID, but I actually stopped running it as an interview show 4 years ago. When I started the WP Minute, I was sort of doing it, I was doing the WP Minute as, an experiment to, can I build a WordPress media away from my name, right? This personal brand thing is fun and it's cool, but I also want to have a standalone, real air quotes business around publishing WordPress news and content and stuff like that. But ultimately, when I have these continued interviews on the WP Minute from the past of the Matt Report, everyone is always sort of like still on the agency side anyway. Like, where do we get customers from? What's the value of a WordPress website? How do we price these WordPress websites? Back then, like when I go back years ago, it was like, how do we compete with the other agency or freelancer coming into the space who might be just buying like a theme forest theme and selling it for like $500? Today, people are now asking that same question, except what do we do about the $500 website that's generated by AI? So like we're constantly like trying to, the agency owners, the WordPress agency owners that often tune in, they care about their craft. They care about serving the customer and putting together a good solution. And they care about WordPress. Like they want to make sure that what I call this blue collar digital worker, where you're not trying to build an empire and not trying to build this like 3,000 person agency. You just want to do good work. You want to feel good at the end of the day. Like I built something great for somebody. I helped somebody with their business, and you want to get paid the value of what it is that you feel like you are worth, right? There's tons of like information out there about like how to make, $50,000 on a weekend, or like all of your web projects should be $50,000 and above because that's how you're going to build a sustainable business. Like, yeah, everybody kind of gets that, but there's also people who are just like, yeah, it's not for me. I just want to build quality stuff, have fun doing it, feel like I'm serving a good audience, and obviously get paid a respected wage. So I don't think much has changed over the last 15 to 18 years. And I think you just slot in like the different technologies that people are competing with. Once again, back then it was just like quick themes that people could buy and put online. And how do you compete against that as an agency owner? And now it's, what do we do with AI since it can do so much?
Yeah.
But still the thread is people care about WordPress and they want to build something good.
Yeah, I have so many questions for you that are percolating in my mind around AI. So I'm going to just put a pin in that because let's come back to AI in a few minutes. Yeah. I have a feeling that you have lots to share in that realm. So what is some solid business advice that you have received that you've taken and benefited from, or shared with others that they've benefited from?
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I've always said to folks, so I also grew up in the car dealership, right? So my family owned a couple small car dealerships down, we're about an hour south of Boston. And that's the sort of like leap that I took. Like my family went from owning car dealerships for 40 years, right? And when my dad and his brothers, my uncles, sold it, late 2006, early 2007, that's when I started the agency with my dad. He still runs the agency today. It's sort of like his pet retirement project.
Whoa.
But the human side has always been important and ingrained in me from the beginning. When we look back to running the car dealership, we weren't in the Boston area. As you know, you're in the New England area. The Herb Chambers of the world, which are massive like car dealerships. They have hundreds of dealerships across the country. They represent like every car manufacturer ever. And, that stigma of high pressure, that stigma of a car salesperson was never us because we were just family owned. And the people that work for us, literally when my dad sold the dealership, they had never worked anywhere else. It was their job from when they were 18, when my grandfather ran the dealership, all the way to when my dad sold the dealership 35, 40 years later. It was the essence of like small business. And you have to be like human relatable to compete with, air quotes, the Herb Chambers of the world. So like staying human today is never more important than ever in the face of AI. I did a recent episode of the Matt Report. I've kind of like brought it back, just doing like one-off little solo episodes. And I know we're going to put a pin on the AI stuff and we can get into it. But when you look at what AI is doing these days, I don't think anyone can be certain like exactly how it's going to impact the tech space, let alone like all of humanity. And I don't think anyone can speak for certain how AI is changing this stuff. What I know for certain is the biggest advantage people are going to have is to communicate and talk to your customers right now to make sure that you're serving their needs at like a real human level. This might mean like unscalable things, taking one-on-one phone calls, going back into the, your CRM and talking to all these people again that you haven't talked to in maybe months or years. Yeah. My advice has always been, in the face of big business, in the face of like big blank logos, that you stand out from the human side. Again, that digital blue collar worker, like you're rolling up your sleeves and doing the work, just trying to serve you. How can we do that?
Love that.
And Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I still preach these days.
That's great. Well, let's get into the AI because we're here, so let's talk about it. First of all, how are you personally using AI in your work these days?
Yeah, so many different ways, right? So at GravityForms, my day to day, like we're constantly trying to find, the workflow advantages for on the marketing side and the community side. Like what can we do to, optimize our day to day life at GravityForms, research, blogging, ideation, like all this stuff. And I'm not a developer, right? Like I ran an agency, but I'm not a developer. I'm much more on like the business and marketing side. But because of AI, I was able to build like a little video game for folks to play at GravityForms called rocketfuelrush.gravity.com.
Cool.
And it's just like a little keyboard game you play, you go around, you capture some rocket fuel, and like there's asteroids and aliens. It's like a little Atari game from like way back in the day. It's kind of fun. And we use it as like a little marketing lead gen kind of thing, right? So we're always like experimenting on that, building add-ons with with AI for GravityForms. Like all the marketing team is getting into it so that we can understand like what engineers are doing. Yeah. Right. So we understand like both sides of the fence. Yeah. Like as marketers and product people are always like, we want more stuff. And the engineering team's like, it's going to take time. Yeah. So we're constantly exercising this stuff. I've been building a bunch of one-off apps that I use day to day. I call them utility apps. These are things that help my own personal workflow at like the WPMinute. So I have a site called pulsewp.cc, and it's a RSS aggregator, right? It helps me just keep track of the WordPress news, and it curates all of that content for me. But I'm secretly, but not so secretly, trying to build it in a way to see how much I can replace myself with AI intentionally, so I know like what my audience has available to them or will have available to them because of AI. Right? Especially in the content space, like how do you stay up to date with WordPress? What's happening in the WordPress news? A lot of this stuff is going to be solved with AI, if not already. So I'm trying to stay ahead of it and like experiment with it to see like where does it hit the human barrier, right? Like where does it hit that wall where like somebody like you and I are necessary like in the conversation. Mm-hmm. Lots of people tell me like, oh, podcasts are going to be dead. AI is going to talk for you. And yeah, I've replicated my voice and it's freaking amazing.
You've done that?
Like, yeah, I've done that. Yeah. And you look at it and like, okay, this is great, but how does it actually share the experiences that humans have had? Right. And part of my work at the WPMinute, I have a gentleman who writes for me and actually does a lot more. He hosts one of the podcasts, Eric Karkovac. One of our sort of like operating guidelines is we only really want to write and create content that's sharing the human experience. Like I'm not going to give you a tutorial on how to do anything anymore, like written tutorial, because it's going to be solved. It already is by AI chats. Like I look at the content that I'm producing as like my advantage is going to be to share in those experiences that I've had or that other humans have had, because AI isn't there yet, right? So, and if it is, I'll call falsification, right? Like it actually hasn't had that experience. It knows of the experience, it can think of the experience, but it hasn't had it. So yeah, I'm using it cautiously optimistic. Like really powerful. I could never build React apps like I'm building right now. Could just never do it. But now I can, but I'm also looking at it like, all right, how is this really going to impact me and my business, like GravityForms and the WPMinute?
What tools did you use to build that game for GravityForms and to replicate your voice?
Yeah. So for the game specifically, I use something called bolt.new, and I started a game there. It was a great way to build like a little MVP. And then I took that off of Bolt and built it with Cursor and just continued to like build upon it, with, I'm going to forget, Netlify as the front end, Supabase as the back end, and kind of started building that out, what I'll call like hand-coded vibe coding. Like when you're in like Bolt or an environment like that, it's like all in that one environment. If you make mistakes, you can like use their tools to roll back, et cetera, et cetera. I think when you start to break it out like a real developer, now you have all of these components separated and you have to think more like a developer to like really make those improvements. So started with Bolt, went to Cursor, built it more traditionally. For Pulse WP, everything is built in Replit. It's an all-encompassing environment, has the database, has the hosting, all built into one. There's positives and negatives to that, but it works pretty good for like really big apps. And then on the voice cloning side, I was just trying out, or I had tried out 11 Labs.
Yeah.
they do a lot with
Yep.
AI voice.
Yeah,
So
I live in the Bay.
that's where I did it.
So I mentioned that I am from New Hampshire. I split my time between the East Coast and West Coast, but most of the time I live in the Bay Area. And so the billboards driving through downtown San Francisco are just unlike anywhere else on earth.
Yeah.
So I saw an 11 Labs billboard last week when I was picking up a friend. I was on my way to SFO airport to pick up a friend from the airport. I saw this billboard and it had a phone number on it and it said call to learn about our AI voices. While I was driving, I asked my phone to dial this phone number and an AI voice answered and I had a little conversation with it and it was fascinating.
Yeah.
Really fascinating.
Yeah, it is. It is crazy stuff.
But I'm of the mindset when I get a spam call or a call from an unidentified number, I don't even answer with my regular voice. I'll pick up the phone and I'll say, hello, because I'm just so paranoid. I mean, and here I am hosting a podcast, but so paranoid about spammers or scammers taking my voice and making me say things and then calling my family and telling them I'm in jail and they need to bail me out. And
yeah, it's a little bit of a wild west, right? Like what's happening, like with what people can do with AI, and I can't even predict on, but it is pretty scary, and you just might get to a point where all of these cell phone companies just have your own AI bot that answers for you, and like you're not, and it's just routing like messages to you to say like whether or not you want to talk with people. It's going to be
fascinating and happening so quickly. I mean, truly so quickly. Yeah. So are there any AI tools that you've tried and abandoned?
Let me see that I abandoned. So Bolt, I mean, I have a pretty good distinction with Bolt and like Replit. When people ask me like, hey, if I want to build an app, like what should I use? Bolt is great as of this recording. Bolt is great for like quick, like truly MVP stuff, but they have a Supabase integration. You can one click send it to Netlify. But the limitation is like continuing to code inside of Bolt right now. And you hit a certain limitation with like what you can and can't do in that environment. And for me, like when people say, I just want to test something out really small, Bolt is really good. A little bit more like intermediate. I won't say advanced, but if you're a little bit more intermediate where you kind of get what you need to do to make an app, for my money, I would go to Replit because it has everything in-house. And it's way easier to debug and do that. So I really haven't given up on anything. Another one that I've brought into the workflow, well, one I've used for a while is called Descript for editing podcasts and video. They're doing a lot with like virtual avatars now. Like you can just like, let's just like you vibe code an app, you can vibe code a podcast, which is crazy. You could just be like, hey, come up with a podcast idea, interviewing somebody in the space, and let's just focus on like Gutenberg. And it will just write out a whole script and then turn that into AI voices that talk to each other. And then show like actual avatars talking to each other visually and video. And you're just like, what's happening? Like, what's happening in this world? Wow. So I haven't given up on any of them yet. I've just been exploring so many cool things.
That is fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. What tasks should WordPress professionals keep doing? And what do you think now or in the very near future is wise to turn over to automation or AI?
Yeah. So for me in this AI stuff, the one issue with AI that I found, and I'm sure others have found this too, I just haven't really been able to put a phrase on it. Not that it needs a phrase, I guess, but it is very easy to, let me take a step back. Just like if you ever went to a casino and you're like, how do people just sit in front of a slot machine and pull this thing all day long? That's what I feel like when I'm using things like Replit or Bolt or like that whole vibe coding thing, because you're just like, oh, I've got an idea. Let me do this. So you do it. And like the immediate like jolt of like that and those endorphins, and you're just like, oh my God, this is awesome. Like, look what I just built. And that first initial rush is awesome. But then you start going down this rabbit hole of like, maybe if I just add this, maybe if I just add that, and you start prompting it to build these things. And next thing you know, like hours have gone by. And then all the problems start to happen. Like it starts conflicting with this feature that you asked it to build 30 minutes ago. And now you ask it to do something else and it rewrites the whole app. And you're like, wait a minute, I just lost my whole app. It's very easy to get lost in this stuff if you love creating things. So like, the biggest pieces of advice that I have is trying to slow down, trying to, think of as you're building this stuff in components. You really have to get that developer mindset. I just put out a video on my YouTube channel about Vibecoding WordPress plugins. I urge people to spend time like talking to your favorite LLM, ChatGPT, Grok, Claude, whatever it is, and just like spend time asking it a whole bunch of questions about this idea that you have first. That way you can kind of like figure out conceptually what you want. And then you spend the tokens in a Bolt, in a Lovable, in a Replit, building out that idea. And I guess the biggest challenge is when like you're trying to figure it all out as you're building it. And that's when you really get lost and spend a lot of time and money like building out things that you end up just like deleting. You're like, how many rainforests did I just burn doing this idea that's not going anywhere? Like you start thinking of like this impact, like how much power literally did I just use for $5 coming up with this idea that I'm never going to ship? So yeah, that's a long way of getting to like spend time like trying to think of that idea, planning out as best as possible. One of the best things is, and I'll try to wrap up this because I'm pretty passionate about this thought, is years ago in WordPress, it was like, oh, you're going to build a website and you're using WordPress? What's wrong with you? That's not a website. A website is HTML and CSS. That's how you build a website. This WordPress thing is not what you should be using. And then WordPress made its mark and everyone was like, you must build a website with WordPress. And then page builders came along and people are like, what are you doing? You don't use page builders to build websites. That's not how you do it. You don't do that. And now page builders have made their mark, right? And now it's just like, what are you doing trying to build a website with AI? That's not how you do it, right? But then AI is going to supplant all of this stuff that has happened. And I have learned a lot just, I don't really love the phrase vibe coding, but I've learned a lot. Vibe coding, learned a lot about development, learned a lot about critical thinking, database structure, like thinking about how to build a product, how to build it in chunks. It's been a great learning experience. If you're in it to learn it and like want to put out good work, then yeah, I say go for it. But if it's like a get rich quick thing, I don't think it's the right move.
Yeah, that's all so fascinating. How would you describe vibe coding?
I mean, for me, it is somebody like me who I will consider myself a power user. I've helped architect plugins before, solutions for customers. Like if you can understand both what's required in the back end, from a high level, like what kind of infrastructure you need. I need a database. Maybe I need edge caching with Cloudflare. Like if you kind of understand this infrastructure, like what languages to use, and then what does the user need on the front end, then it's just like, if you're not a pure developer, you're just having those natural language discussions with these LLMs to build that for you. I need a Supabase backend for a React app where the user can get a summary of the WordPress news in a nice, easy, clean user interface, categorized by, these 8 categories: mobile experience first, fast page loading speed, and use Tailwind CSS for front end design. And then it goes into those next phases. Like you see it, you can kind of like use it, and then you realize what's needed next. And then you just have natural conversations. To me, that's vibe coding. Like you're experiencing it. You don't know quite what you need yet, but you can kind of like go back and forth with the AI. That's how it works for me in my head.
Yeah. So Matt, you are a learning resource for so many people in the WordPress world. Who is a current learning resource for you? Where do you go to get new information or to sort of stretch and learn, or just to get fun, what podcast do you listen to, or YouTube channels do you watch, or anything else?
Yeah. I mean, right now I am subscribed to just a deluge of AI YouTube channels. I don't know if any of them are amazing. And as I talk, I'm going to pull up one podcast. But so there's a ton of AI YouTube shows that I watch just to try to like keep up with the news, right? There's just so much stuff. One of the podcasts right here is The Artificial Intelligence Show. That's the name of it. That's one that I listen to for a more comprehensive breakdown of the AI space. It's audio first. That's what I prefer. But in the WordPress world, I constantly tune into Chris Badgett's Lifter LMS podcast. He does a fantastic job. He's also somebody who lives up in Maine, not in New Hampshire, but he's up in Maine. And he does a fantastic job with his show. He just celebrated 500 episodes. And he always has great, compelling guests that come on. And I always learn a lot from the stuff that he's putting out.
Awesome. So Raquel suggested that I ask you about the future of WordPress. So to honor Raquel, I will do that. Matt, where do you think WordPress needs to evolve next?
Geez, just the easy question, right? Yeah. So like at the time of this recording, we just had WordCamp EU. We have this new initiative that's out now called FAIR, which is sort of a distributed network of servers that will allow you to install packages from other places than WordPress.org. It's helping with the supply chain and the ability to get, a way that there's not just like one point of failure. Technically, this makes sense. This is what Linux has done forever. It's actually part of the Linux Foundation. It's an initiative that's been formed over there. On the surface, yes, this makes sense. From a technology, it makes sense. But the biggest thing that I see lacking with that initiative is it doesn't help WordPress get better. It doesn't help WordPress get adopted. As we go into, halfway mark of 2025, it's not making WordPress any better. And especially in the face of AI and anyone being able to build code with WordPress. Future of WordPress right now is, I'm hopeful that folks like Automatic and others can lead the charge to make the core of WordPress more innovative and more compelling for people to build solutions with WordPress. WordPress has always been great because of that portability. Being able to have all of your content, all of your data in one place is actually looking more appealing these days, right? I think there's been a big push for bigger media brands to be like, whoa. Like we already saw Google steal from us and like build SEO, the biggest video game of all. We're going to show you how to rank. And if you can figure out this formula, you'll get traffic too. Just figure out this formula, right? The world's biggest MMORPG is SEO in my opinion.
Wow. I've never heard it put that way, but I appreciate that. Yes.
Yeah, like go figure it out. Yeah. Have you figured it out yet? No. Okay, we'll keep moving this carrot down the thing. Oh, but if you want the coolest skins and the best weapon in the game, just buy Google Ads. You'll get there faster. Oh, that's what I'll do, just like Fortnite. So anyway, I think people are coming online and saying, okay, wait a minute, Google took our data and now they gamified that on us, and now AI is doing that X. How are we going to compete with that? How about we retain our data? This isn't a good thing for the open web, but it is good for somebody who's like, no, this is my content. Like we spent lots of money doing this. This is all of my stuff right here. These are my experiences. Maybe I don't want AI to have this. And maybe the future of WordPress, when everyone's getting that vanilla AI response of what's the best pizza shop in town or how do I build a website, and it's all just like this generic stuff, maybe websites are the best thing for people to go and experience something more human, right? It's not going to come as instant as your ChatGPT response, but people will have to, like we open up books today and go, oh, this is rather refreshing. People are going to go to a website and go, oh, this is refreshing. Look at the design here, right? So I'm hoping that the future of WordPress, again, long way of getting to it, is a place where it coexists with AI tools and it can become a central hub of your content or your data. Or the content and the data of your users. If you're building an app, WordPress has user registration built in. Maybe you're using it as your central hub for user registration, and that's the sort of nucleus of your AI solution that you're building, blog content, training content, et cetera. So that's a semi-positive outlook, I hope, for WordPress.
Yeah. Anything else when you're thinking about the future of WordPress that floats to mind?
So I'm hoping, one of the things I love about WordPress is the ability for somebody to take WordPress off the shelf and unpack it and learn from it. Like really understand like how, if you were taking apart a lawnmower motor, let's say, lawnmower motor, size of a basketball, not very complicated. But when you took apart that motor, you're like, oh, this is how the motor in my car works, or this is how the motor in a tractor works. Like this is like a tiny little piece of how like the greater thing operates. WordPress is sort of like that. Like you take it apart, you figure out the web, you figure out what pages on a web server do. You understand like user login and registration. You understand database, front end and back end. I hope that WordPress can continue to be that learning point for a person because it spawns so many different things. Like you don't have to be like, if you cracked open WordPress, sure, you could become a developer or a designer, but you could also be the person who writes your monthly newsletter,
Yeah.
or you become a journalist, or you become a webmaster at a big school system. Like, it unlocks so much additional knowledge that I hope that's where WordPress leads to in the future, if that makes sense. Like, if it can become that motor of all things web, then I hope that keeps that evolution going for somebody.
I'm also thinking about this contrast between being able to crack open a lawnmower and see how the pieces work, being able to crack open the hood of WordPress or of a WordPress site and see how the pieces work, in contrast to my understanding of AI, which is we actually don't know what's happening under the hood. We have these amazing tools and we have the input and we see the output, but we do not understand, we meaning even the scientists creating these tools, don't understand what's happening in that in-between under the hood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a very popular term right now, like the MCP. I don't even know if you call it a protocol or a layer. Like, I call it just API. And MCPs, to me, like, everyone's like, oh, it's so great. You talk to an MCP and the MCP goes and talks to all these other AIs around the world. And I'm like, wait a minute. But we don't know what's happening in the middle there. Right. And like, what did we see with APIs? We saw APIs really limit the web. At first, they were used to open the web, and everyone's like, oh, we can get access to Facebook API and Twitter API. Look what we can do. Developer tools. I can build my own experience for Twitter. I can pull down reviews from Facebook. And then as soon as they hit critical mass, it was like, oh, we're actually going to shut these APIs down. And now you're not going to have access to it. And at minimum, you pay Twitter or X $200 a month if you want like certain API access. And MCPs to me is just like another thing that can be, fine-tuned for more monetary gain. Or like charging for data and access. I mean, like, I thought the whole thing for AI was for me to like open this all up and do all these things. It is now, until you hit this critical mass, and then they're going to say, well, your ChatGPT bot can't talk to Google. I mean, I know it does now, but as an example, you can't talk to Google anymore. They're not paying the fees for it. So now you can't. So now we just come up with just another layer of like complexity in the open web. Yeah. And that's not cool.
What does MCP stand for?
You're going to put me on the spot. Thank God for editing. I always forget what it is. MCP is Managed Connectivity Provider.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's a bunch of like videos you can find on the web, and it's just kind of like a wrapper around APIs. And yes, it's instead of API just being this one-to-one thing, like knock on the door, do you have that data for me? Yes, here's the data. And I bring that data back. And I do that multiple times a session. MCP will say, knock, knock, I'm looking for the data. And now all these other AI bots were like, oh, we've got the data. How do you want the data? And give it back to you. So it's like, yeah, the potential is awesome. But I also see the potential for them to go, all right, this API is out of the MCP. Now you're not going to get it from here. You're going to have to go to this other MCP to get it over there. And that's going to cost you money. And I'm just like, streaming services are already doing this to me. I thought we were cutting the cord from cable. Yeah. And I was like, why is HBO like $20 a month now? What happened to $9.99? So anyway, that's just my own soapbox moment of costs.
Matt, talk to me about the latest at GravityForms. What's new or exciting these days?
Yeah, so GravityForms, we're slowly working on rebranding to all things Gravity. So you can go to gravity.com today, and that'll bring you to GravityForms and our suite of products. But our most recent product, Gravity SMTP, which allows you to connect up to other SMTP providers. A lot of people using GravityForms for donations, user registration forms, and those transactional emails that go out. Very important that the person gets that in their inbox for obvious reasons. So Gravity SMTP, make sure that gets delivered safely and securely. But as we push towards the end of the year, everything getting put into gravity.com. There'll be a whole new experience there.
What an awesome domain.
Finding all of our products.
Yeah, great domain.
Yeah, Carl was very happy about getting gravity.com, and he didn't share the price, but I'm sure it was a pretty penny to get gravity.com. And then every month I host webinars for the community at learn.gravity.com. So if you want to check out the webinars that I host there, that's a great resource.
Fantastic. Love it. And what's one WordPress plugin that you couldn't live without besides a Gravity product?
Yeah, besides a Gravity product. So one plugin I always install is called Instant Images. Cliff, I think his first name's Cliff. I can't remember his first name, but Instant Images basically ties into all of the image services like Unsplash, Pexels, a bunch of other like services. Yeah, when I'm working on like demo sites, when I'm showcasing stuff in tutorials, and I need images quick, Instant Images is just so handy. I just install it, search for a different, like if I'm building like a restaurant website in a demo or, a library website or whatever, I can quickly find those images and just throw them right into the WordPress site. And it helps me build out sites faster. So that's the one I go with.
Very cool. Thank you. Thanks for that tip.
Yeah. Yeah.
Raquel also asked me to ask you about brand building. And you mentioned earlier about your shift from Matt Report to WPMinute in part as, and I don't know if experiment's quite the right word, but basically an experiment and moving away from personal brand towards a more general brand. And yeah, anything that you'd like to share around brand building and your experience with it?
Yeah, rebranding is super hard. I've been learning that lesson over the last 4.5 years since I made the shift. It's really hard after you've done a podcast for whatever 10, 12 years, and everybody kind of knows you from the Matt Report, and you're like, I've been talking about WPMinute, and people are like, I just went to press conf and people are like, how's the Matt Report going? I'm like, oh, well, I haven't done a show in about 4.5 years, but I've got this other thing called the Matt Report. It's fun. It's definitely like, I look at everything as an experiment. As a creator, this is weird. I don't know if I've ever like said this publicly before, but a few years ago, like I just considered myself an artist. Just a form of an artist, not a real artist, not some big name artist. I just feel like I'm creating little pieces of artwork, and whether it's a podcast, a blog post, a video, like that's the way that I perceive the work that I'm doing. And like a good artist, I always want to just destroy things and move on to the next thing. Like I've had this era of creating this type of artwork and I just want to move on. And for me, like I did a recent episode of the Matt Report about this where I'm trying really hard to not let WordPress define who I am, and even the podcasts that I do as who I am. They are just pieces of artwork along the way, which make up the greater presence of me, right? And for me, like that's personal brand building, is for me to say, here's all the work I've done, not just like this one thing. Like I'm trying to not let myself get caught up in that. We're doing a podcast right now. I worked at a podcast hosting company. People always ask me, should I start a podcast? What's the ROI on a podcast? For me, podcasting is just about these connections that you and I are having right now and the audience that are listening to us in their ears. And so much stuff can happen from this meeting that we're having right now that neither of us know what it is, right? Like you and I might do more partnership stuff in the future. Somebody listening to this might knock on my door, might knock on your door, and some other opportunity happens, right? It's increasing that surface luck area. So for personal branding or branding exercises, I just say like, try to stay human, try to have an opinion, or have some kind of stance, and always be open to, listening to others, right? And trying to figure out like where you kind of like slot into that conversation and how you can help others with their stuff. So that's the only thing that I've ever done to do this.
Would you share more about this piece around always having an opinion or a stance? What is that about?
Yeah. I mean, I think when you're like in the WordPress, like you're a podcast in the WordPress space, I have a podcast. There's a lot of us in the space of WordPress creating podcasts, and you wouldn't think that, but there's a lot. So how do you stand out from another podcast? And, there's lots of people doing it. And first of all, I think everyone should do it. But once you get your feet under you, and once you figure out like, this is the thing for me, this is where you want to like make your mark. This is where you want to say, tune into me or read my stuff or watch my stuff because XYZ. And, my promise for the WordPress professional is for me to educate, inform, and entertain. Like, hopefully you get one of those three things when you tune into a piece of my content. And a lot of people, for whatever reason, value my opinion because I haven't given up creating content in the space. But there's so many people who just come in and do a more like generic approach to it. And I don't think that's valuable to anyone. Fine in the beginning. Absolutely. You need to kind of walk before you can run. But I would urge people to, as soon as you feel like you're picking up that momentum, to really buckle down and find the thing that resonates with your audience and resonates with the work that you want to do, because it's only going to be better for you in the long run.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So since I have you here, any other podcasting mistakes that you made early on that you'd warn other WordPress podcasters such as myself about?
Yeah, I mean, getting overwhelmed is something that I still struggle with today, right? Like doing so much. I don't plan things really well, like long-term things. And what I started to lean into is, again, like going back to like that artist concept, is I don't mind doing seasons, right? And just saying like, for the next 12 episodes, this is the season of XYZ.
Yeah.
And guess what, audience? It's going to end. There's going to be a little bit of a break, and then you're going to hear from me again. Now, there's other people like Chris Badgett. Again, fantastic. I don't think he's missed an episode since he launched 500 episodes ago. And that's awesome. But I can't do that. Mentally, I'm not there, right? Because I need to always keep changing to satisfy my creative needs. And that's why I go with the season approach. Like right now, as of this recording, I have two guys that are hosting the WPMinute podcast because they're agency owners. Mm-hmm. Toby Crines and Kurt Von Onen. They're both WordPress agency owners. And I said to myself, I want to start doing more content for agency owners so that we can figure out how they're faring in this AI world. Yeah. And I'm not the guy to do it.
Yep.
I haven't run an agency in 8 years. Now, I can tell you a decade of experience that I've had for agency life. That was 8 years ago. And I don't feel like I should be the one telling people to do it if I'm not living it. So I brought them on to host a season of that discussion because I value the audience and I want to make sure people are getting good content. So that's just a small example, but on paper, seasons. If you feel overwhelmed, plan out 8 to 12 episodes and off you go.
Love it. Thanks for that advice.
Yeah, I mean, no problem.
What else, just on a personal level, what's interesting to you these days? Music, movies, books you're reading, ideas you're engaging with?
Yeah, I mean, it's the AI stuff. And I have 3 young boys. So it's kind of like helping them figure out what that future is. And, it's like, my wife's like, they're all going to college. And I'm going, well, do they have to? I mean, like, do we need that bill in 10-ish years? Or can they start their own like trades business? And what does that look like? So really just trying to take the stuff and get them interested in like content and media and see if that's a thing that they're interested in. So it's always like seeing what I can at least do in my work life and how can I bring that into their life. Like they love drawing images with ChatGPT and like being creative and making their own like stories. So I'm trying to get the more creative side of the stuff that I do and bringing it down to their levels. That and trying to keep up with them is pretty much what takes up most of my time.
Seems pretty time consuming. I'm just in awe of what it must be like to be a child growing up. I guess, I don't know if the term is AI native, but in the way that I was basically internet native growing up.
Correct.
And mobile.
Yeah.
Not quite mobile native, but close enough. Yeah. What it is to be a child growing up with these tools.
Yeah. My son will bring home his homework, it's like his math homework or whatever. And, they're still writing with a pencil and he's doing all like the whatever long division and all this stuff. And he'd be like, all right, when he's done, I got to grade the homework. And he's like, all right, Dad, here's the homework. He'll bring it to me. And I'm like, all right, go in the other room. I'll grade it. And then I'll turn around to ChatGPT and I'll snap a picture of it with ChatGPT. Grade this paper, right? I'm not going to tell him that I'm using this to do it, right?
That's incredible.
But of course, I got to spot check everything because it, doesn't read handwriting 100%. But I'm like, I don't want to tell him that I'm like using this because once he realizes like there's calculators, he's going to be like, why do we do this? So
yeah. Oh, that's great. That's great. So I will ask you the same question that I asked Raquel and that I ask every Cosmos guest. Who should we invite to Cosmos podcast next? And please share a question for them.
Yeah. So I was going to go with Raquel, but now that I know that, that Raquel is already here, I would go with Jake Goldman from 10up fame. And the question I would ask him is his projection of marketing teams in the age of AI. I think he has a pretty strong opinion about marketing in the age of AI. Then I would go with Chris Badgett, if you want a second. Chris Badgett from Lifter LMS. And then for him, it'd be the same thing, like course creation in the age of AI. Like, will people be creating courses anymore, or are you just getting these answers from AI, and where's that value? So those are the two that I would.
Fabulous. Thank you, Matt. It is so wonderful to talk with you and to get to know you a bit through this conversation. Where can people find you online or find your work?
Yeah. So dayjob at gravityforms.com. And if you want the WordPress stuff, it's thewpminute.com.
Fantastic. You have a wonderful rest of your day, Matt, and everyone listening.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you.